What is up, everyone? Steve Metrics here with yo boy,
TJ Triggs.
and together we are Db8 Sports here on Wild Card Weekend of the NFL playoffs. And how about those Saturday games, DJ Triggs? How about that?
Man, I want to say like it was surprising, but it really wasn't.
I definitely know you kind of have a better read on Herbert and what you think of him as a quarterback compared to what I think and what I've seen lately whenever I turn on Raiders Chargers games. But that was the game that shocked me. I did not think he would just absolutely unravel and completely fall apart against Houston, because I thought that they played so hard against my Raiders the previous week, looking at the path to the Super Bowl to essentially win against Houston, go to Kansas City, and then play one final tough game against either Buffalo or Baltimore. And you got to take care of business first. And they could not do that against the Houston Texans D.
Yeah. Like, what was it? Four interceptions?
Oh, it's four.
Like
that's no debate. That's no debate.
Man, it's just one of those things where I don't know. Like, I think he needs more weapons.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think he needs a better running game.
Yeah.
Dobbins'
leg is like this close from getting sawed off.
Yeah. I mean, he's an awesome player when he's there, but you can't really trust him all the time. And obviously the Ravens were like, oh yeah, we'll just get rid of all of those dudes. And the Chargers were like, we'll take them. Come on in.
Yeah.
But
doesn't it feel like they basically did at running back what the Steelers did at quarterback? They're like, let's just take these pieces, throw them into the position, and hope it works.
Yeah. And hey, it got them to the playoffs. We got to brag about Harbaugh being the brilliant mind and all this stuff. And it was like you said, I was just kind of sitting back going, okay, like, all right, that's cool. But something's going to happen at some point.
Yeah.
And there you go.
I know that to me, this is the style of kind of what I was thinking going into this, where I feel like those teams that kind of took their foot off the gas going into week 18, maybe treat it as a preseason game and then go into the playoffs fresh, I think is actually going to show. Houston is definitely the first team to do that. We'll see what happens with Philly and Green Bay later today, because Philly took their foot off the gas. Green Bay went all out.
Sort of.
Yeah, but Green Bay, you got banged up, and you don't go into a game playing for something and hoping someone else takes care of business when you're already in. That's just crazy.
I'm not gonna lie, the whole Green Bay scenario is just insane to me. But yeah, Love did go get hobbled off, but Josh Jacobs like barely played. So
right, that was the smart play. And I think when you start to see guys go down, it was like, hey, Jacobs is an absolute weapon. Like, you have to have that guy. That's like the Ravens with like Derrick Henry. Like, you want that guy to go. Although in their game they had to take care of business just to secure everything at home, which they did. So I see that. But yeah, I feel like there's going to be possibly like one other team that's out there that kind of played all out. And we'll see how it goes. But I don't know, man. Like, I was really, really shocked at how poorly Justin Herbert played in Houston. Plus, that was indoors. That's exactly like your home turf. So to me, it's just a complete letdown by the Chargers. A team that I thought was going the right direction.
Like, it kind of puts the Chargers in a. All right, I'm just gonna run down the wins that Houston has this year, and then you tell me if the Chargers fit in the like. You'll see what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
So
I got you.
Houston beat the Colts, the Bears, the Jaguars. They actually got one against the Bills by 3.
Yep.
The Patriots, the Colts, the Cowboys, the Jaguars, and the Titans.
Man, that's a pretty soft schedule.
Right. And I kind of throw the Chargers in that mix because the teams they lost to were the Vikings, the Packers, the Lions, the Chiefs, the Ravens.
Oh man.
And they had a squeaker against the Titans that they lost to as well. But like if you take out that Titans loss and that Bills win, like you said, soft schedule, and everyone they played that is a playoff team, they got smashed. Like,
yeah.
And you then look at it and you go, okay, were the Chargers a legit playoff team, or were they one of those soft schedule guys?
Yeah, and I think that was a team too that both you and I were looking at going into the season, seeing how Vegas was slotting them at 9 wins. I think LA ended up getting like 9 or 10, so we both would have lost on that. But completely falling apart to Houston definitely points out the fact that LA was probably not that great of a team. Great on defense, but scoring wise had a lot of really weird hiccups. And that's what happens when you strip down your offense to literally just Justin Herbert.
Yeah. And in most categories, and I know I go into numbers a lot. I mean, that's what we do, but Justin Herbert was barely top 10 in any category for like he was literally like 11th, 10th, 9th in every statistical category that you could think of, touchdowns, yards, QBR. Like the only one that he was actually inside the top 10 where he was number 7 was was quarterback rating. And you're like, okay, well, what the other guys I'm looking in this rating category, I mean, there's guys like Tanner McKee and Marcus Mariota had high ratings. And like
I don't even know where Tanner McKee is. Is he the Philly guy?
He's the Philly guy, yeah. He had a really good a solid game.
He's the guy that screwed me up from getting paid 7 times in my 6 out of 8 parlay.
Yeah, he went for 323 and 4 touchdowns. Yeah.
Dang it.
But like Herbert barely threw for 20 touchdowns. He was like under 4,000 yards. Like what elite category is Justin Herbert in? None. So like I don't get it.
Yeah, it's pretty weird what they got going on there. We'll see how many years he's got left on his contract because I know he got paid somewhat recently, not too long ago. But again, you and I were pointing out that interesting scenario where what if he would have actually got traded to Minnesota, and then had they ended up taking JJ McCarthy, like that is still. Oh, I wonder if that is actually still in play this offseason.
Could be.
That's an interesting thing.
That could be.
Yeah, that could really get interesting in LA and Minnesota. I mean, if Minnesota does completely fall apart with Sam Darnold, bringing in Justin Herbert, dealing JJ McCarthy, that could get wild. That could get really wild. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. But
Herbert, he took a 5-year 262 deal. By the way,
so he's got like 3 left, I think.
Yeah. He's doing okay in the money.
Yeah. Oh, totally, man. Totally. I could see though that if there's a team that wanted to kind of flip some kind of deal, now would be the great time to do it because you know that you're pretty much committed to him for the next 3 years. So you have that stability. You know you're going to get that. You know what you're playing with. And if you're the coach, you're pretty much tying yourself straight to Justin Herbert if that is the case, whether you're Harbaugh or Kevin O'Connell. So yeah, one of these two is going to have to make the decision. Hey, do we keep going with Justin Herbert or do I flip and change the script and go with someone younger, newer kind of thing? We'll see what happens there.
I mean,
but it's interesting.
A QBR of 13 and 4 interceptions in a playoff game is almost like what are we doing here? Dobbins ran for 26 yards. I mean, the old Ravens running backs were averaging 3 yards a carry. Like
they're so washed out.
48 yards total. The only guy that came to play was Ladd McConkey. Like 197
he's a baller, man.
Was nuts.
Yes. Yeah, he's definitely a guy that I mean, I started my whole fantasy puzzle spreadsheet with Ladd McConkey because seeing the stuff he did at Georgia is just crazy. and he can definitely translate that to the NFL. But he's a guy going into next season that, like, I think I got to figure out a way to, like, quantify somehow these playoff games in addition to the regular season games, because again, football doesn't have a lot of data to begin with. But in the playoffs, I mean, you are generally playing against tougher opponents. So if there's a way that we can figure out how to take that performance with a small amount of teams that are actually in the playoffs, that gives us extra data for a guy like Lad McConkey, or even in the other game, Derrick Henry just like went off. That game, in terms of next year's projections, absolutely needs to mean something.
Yeah, I mean, how about we hop to that game? I know it's going to be really quick. I mean, it was 21-0 at the half. Like,
it was.
Okay, they just smacked around the Steelers again. That's fine.
Yeah, and again, too, the Steelers are completely inept on offense. Despite them making the playoffs, I gotta admit, and we pointed this out in the last show or two, how I kind of basically gauge all NFL coaches with having a 3-year clock. That basically, if you don't do anything, you have basically 3 seasons until you should justly get fired. Or if you're someone like in the Denver Broncos case, where you find a guy like Bo Nix and you flip it, now you reset your clock. I think Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, I think they lost a season on that 3-year clock.
No,
I think they do, because they're completely inept on offense.
Wait. Okay. I'm with you. Okay, but they literally haven't given Mike Tomlin anything over the last like 2 or 3 seasons. He's been playing with like random dudes that you can't even name half the guys that caught a pass. I mean, we can, but obviously most people are like, oh, Van Jefferson's on that team? Oh, right. Mike Williams was the big trade.
Yes.
Calvin Austin, who's that guy? Like, Pat Freiermuth had 3 receptions himself. And it's like, Jaylen Warren had 4, Najee Harris had 3. It's like, well, who's he throwing the football to? Yeah, we got George Pickens, but he whines a lot. They gave him Russ. They gave him Justin Fields. And Tomlin still got to the playoffs.
Agreed. Absolutely.
I just saw something about getting him fired, and Steelers fans they were 50-50 on bringing him back. I saw a poll just saw on Bleacher Report. It was 51 to 49%. And I'm like,
to me, it's got to be better than that. To me, it has to absolutely be 70% that you bring him back. However, like I said, you get 3 years, so I chopped 30% off, and that's why I put it at 70. So right now I go 70. Next year I go 40. Year after that, then I go to 0.
Maybe give him a quarterback. Maybe give him maybe a wide receiver or 2. Maybe.
Yeah. So that's where I want to know who in the world signed off on getting rid of Deontay Johnson?
No idea.
Made no sense. That made no sense and completely made your team worse. And we were going into the season, especially in terms of fantasy, saying, all right, cool. They're getting better at quarterback. They have George Pickens. They have Deontay Johnson. They have Pat Freiermuth. Arthur Smith is totally an upgrade over Matt Canada at the offensive coordinator position. Cool. This is looking better. They're going to figure out some things out. And then you strip Deontay Johnson, and you really do not replace him until mid-season when Mike Williams arrives. And that is not an upgrade over Deontay Johnson at all.
2 other teams didn't want Mike Williams. It was like, oh, hey, let's just go get this guy from the scrap heap. Oh, Russell Wilson's available? We'll take him for free. Remember, Russell Wilson, he's not even getting paid. He's free.
No, he is completely free.
Denver's still paying. But if you look at this game and you just look at the box score, right? Yep. Well, Russell Wilson was 20 of 29 for 270 and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's actually a really solid stat line.
Right. But then you look at the other side.
Is gorgeous.
Yeah. You look at the other side and you go, oh, you ran into Lamar Jackson, who only missed 5 passes. and Derrick Henry had 186 and 2 touch. Oh,
yeah, you can't win that.
You're not going to win. They ran for 300 yards or 299. Like
that's like college football numbers right there at that point.
Right. Was Army and Navy in this game or what?
Exactly. Yes. And I don't know about you, but like, I mean, maybe it's the fact that I'm not used to seeing him in a Ravens uniform, but I swear every time I saw Derrick Henry get the football, I did not think that was Derrick Henry. There was so much pop and explosion off him going through the gaps that I'm like, oh man, this is some like really good backup that I don't know about. Because like normally, like you see Derrick Henry like take a step or two and then he gets low momentum and then he goes or he gets swarmed by the defensive unit. But this time it was like one cut, go. And then I realized that's Derrick Henry. I'm like, what the heck is going on here?
So all right. I'm obviously representing the G. I'm a little afraid like of Saquon Barkley now. Only because I mean we have a really good run defense or rush defense for the first time in years. But man, Derrick Henry running for 7 yards a carry. Did you see that stiff arm he put on somebody? Like,
right
literally was like, and not even just the stiff arm. There was a point where, you look at Derrick Henry, you're like, oh yeah, that's a big back. He's run, Jerome Bettis, Mike Allstott, that kind of.
Totally.
He ran past people, like it just took off, and I'm like, how is he strong and that fast?
Yes. And he absolutely has that breakaway speed where I believe like his like 40-yard dash time is like what 4.445. Like,
ooh, that's a good thing to look up.
He totally breaks away when he gets past the linebackers and then gets to the secondary. Those secondary guys who are normally your fastest guys on the defense, they cannot keep up with his speed, and that is really concerning.
Yeah. He ran a combine time of, all right, this is insane. He ran a combine time of 4.54, which, okay, in running back terms, that's a little slow. But
not for us.
He's 6'3", 250. Like,
man, it's insanely fast.
Yeah.
I mean, I really get the feeling too, and like somebody pointed out that he's like 31 years old, which is shocking. But man, to me, like he looks young. He's fast. I mean, like outside of having the weird foot issues when he was playing for vrabel back in that Cincinnati Bengals game. I mean, like, man, like if this guy's healthy, like he is just impossible to deal with unless you get him immediately. Other than that, he's really going to take off. And the beauty of how he plays is in a game, he can do absolutely nothing, and then he will take off for like 60 to 80 yards in one play.
Yeah.
And he will take care of business for your entire day.
Yeah. And this is the scary part about Baltimore. Okay, we've talked all about Derrick Henry. There's an MVP at quarterback, right?
Like, yes, and he has to win it, man. I would be sick even after last season of Christian McCaffrey not winning it because they gave it to Lamar. They showed his stat line, man. Dude, he has literally had 45 total touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Like, that's basically just 15 total touchdowns less than Jaden Daniels last year at LSU. And what do you know? He won the Heisman for like 60 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Sorry, the NFL is tougher. So we're not going to give it to a guy who has 45 total touchdowns and 4 interceptions. That's mind-blowing.
And also join the 4,000-yard club.
Yes.
And the 40 touchdowns in a season club.
Yeah.
That like I didn't know that was easy.
I know.
41 touchdowns and 4 interceptions is nuts.
It's crazy.
There was a big deal about Justin Herbert only throwing 3 interceptions. Well, guess what? He had 23 touchdowns. Lamar had 18 more.
Yes. Yeah, like just totally way more. And not only that, the weakest part of his game that I've seen from watching games is how his presence is outside of the pocket. Well, he did that in this game when it was 0-0, and his first touchdown was kind of running outside the pocket, found a guy at the back of the end zone. It was gorgeous. That Rashad Bateman pass was amazing.
Like, I'm still just completely puzzled on why anyone in their right mind thinks that Josh Allen. I mean, I know I went on that rant a little bit ago, but it's like you got to be kidding me. I mean, Lamar Jackson's top 20 in rushing yards.
Yes.
And like top 5, top 3, I believe, in passing yards and passing touchdowns. And it's like he ran for 915 yards.
Yes.
If my running back would do that, if your running back would do that, you would have been happy. Like, I mean, now we have your running back, but like any other season, if a Packers running back would have ran for 900 yards, I would have been like, oh yeah, that's a good season. Like, cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like the thing is too, like, I don't know why Josh Allen comes up alongside Lamar Jackson, because what you've pointed out and we've seen recently, I mean, to me, the only other quarterback that should be up there is the one who came so close but came up short at the end is Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is absolutely the second best quarterback in the NFL behind Lamar Jackson. And that's it. Like, Lamar Jackson to me is doing basically like Aaron Rodgers-esque prime kind of numbers here with this past season. And then Joe Burrow is kind of up there as well. But then Josh Allen is significantly behind both those guys.
Yeah. If I told you he had as many rushing yards as Alvin Kamara, J.K. Dobbins, guys in that realm, you would be like, oh, really? That's kind of crazy. He has as many touchdowns as Brian Robinson Jr., James Conner, Zach Charbonnet, Bucky Irvin.
Yeah.
And you would be like, oh, wait, what?
Yeah.
Is that Lamar Jackson?
Yeah.
It's insane.
It is. And those are guys that like you can have on your roster and have a solid fantasy football team built around.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Speaking of fantasy football, what about the coaching carousel? It's almost like fantasy football coming to life here.
It is. And it kind of sucks because to me, one of the most exciting jobs that I was excited to see people go for was the New England Patriots job. And it just showed that everything from I thought what would happen earlier in the week was that it was basically a complete sham from day one. Gerard Mayo did not deserve to get fired, along with my coach, Antonio Pierce. But for what that is, it basically set the platform that you knew 100% they were going to hire Mike Vrabel. And again, I've talked with other people, and it's completely the opposite of what you'll see on actual sports media. Mike Vrabel is not a good head coach. He's not. He worked for the Cleveland Browns this past offseason on their defensive unit, and they stunk. Like, their defense is garbage, hot garbage. He's not a defensive coordinator. He doesn't call plays. He's a linebackers coach. Unfortunately, same thing with my Antonio Pierce, linebackers coach, not a defensive coordinator. So now you have that guy running the show. The only reason why he's running the show is because he was a former Patriots player from back in the day. So this team, which has two exciting young quarterbacks, he is not going to give any he's not going to give any, gosh, I don't even know what the word is, but he's not going to make their game any better. He's there primarily to coach up a certain part of the defense. I mean, there's just nothing that I see that is going to really make that team better with him outside of whatever coordinators come in and can really develop those young quarterbacks, which I think are just dynamites and diamonds in the rough. Because I know one of these coaches was interviewed for the job, and there's not a single person on the planet besides Bob Kraft who would take Ben Johnson over Mike Vrabel, but he did.
Yeah. So just a fun little shindig. The just to talk about Vrabel and Cleveland. Now, yeah, Cleveland was a dumpster fire. Awesome. They were a dumpster fire last year too. They were the number one total defense in the NFL.
Sure.
Like, can't make that up. And now they're bottom 10.
Yeah.
Like they're not doing the same job they were, but yet you're telling us we brought in this defensive minded head coach to be an advisor or whatever. I don't even really know what his role was, but is he great? I don't know. Maybe.
No, he's not.
Like
everything you need to know about him, he showed in that Titans game against the Bengals back when Derrick Henry was not 100%. That told you everything about who he is as a coach.
Yeah. And none of that, like, I don't know, just it just left a weird taste in my mouth, I guess. Like, but
yeah,
on a real note, I mean, the New England Patriots is probably the best job to get. Like, I feel like Gerard Mayo got it 1 year too soon, and he was just a gap, and it was obvious. A bad roster. Literally, I'm gonna be honest, just sitting here thinking about it, I don't know if I can name 2 receivers on New England's staff. I'm trying. Is Kendrick Bourne still there?
Pop Douglas, Kendrick Bourne.
Okay, he's still there.
And your boy from the Horned Frogs of Texas Christian University, Tyquan Thornton. That's no debate.
Tyquan Thornton still play? See, but 2 of those guys, I was like, I can't remember if they're on the team. Okay, so I guess I could have named 2, but that's the problem though. Like, none of those guys, they're not number 1s, they're not number 2s, they're probably 3s and 4s.
They're 3s, definitely. That's no debate.
You're coming into a team that has 5 picks in the top, I think 100, if I'm not mistaken, or pretty close to that. They got the number 4 pick. We were talking about this a week ago. They don't need a quarterback. Drake May is pretty solid. Like, give him a year or 2. Let's see what happens. They have $126 million coming in for cap space. Yeah, it's insane. But they could mess it up. They could be the Bears, who had all that cap space, threw it at a bunch of guys, and they still suck. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, their GM is Elliot Wolf.
Yeah,
the son of Ron Wolf. Yeah, so this is pretty interesting. If I had to guess, I think they're basically going to keep their for the majority of their team, they're going to keep the majority of that staff.
Yeah,
and just slot in Mike Vrabel.
Right, and think about it. Now you've got enough space where maybe you bring in a T. Higgins. Maybe.
Yes.
Maybe you draft another wide receiver to put next to him, because again, most of those teams in that like upper echelon of draft order, those guys, they need quarterbacks.
Yes.
New England doesn't. So
no.
maybe New England grabs a Travis Hunter. Maybe. Yeah. Who knows? Like that option's there, because Tennessee, Cleveland, New York, those 3 teams all need quarterbacks. Like, and they're set up really, really good. I don't like the taste in my mouth. It's a cool story, like Vrabel goes home and whatever, but I don't know.
No, to me, I'll call a spade a spade. It just screams racism in a bad way. It really does, man. And I'm going to say same thing with what happened to my Las Vegas Raiders. The exact same thing. I mean, granted, they're both going to get fully paid, and I get it. But Antonio Pierce had a great coaching staff surrounding him. There's no reason why we had to just rip that Band-Aid off. And then on top of it, fire Tom Telesco right behind him. Stuff like that just leaves a really bitter taste in my mouth when you know that they're building something and they don't have the quarterback play to make it better. And in Gerard Mayo's case, he's showing up on a team that has a very bad roster that was drafted solely by Bill Belichick. You're looking at a John Gruden, Mike Mayock situation where Mike Mayock is a really smart guy. Elliot Wolf is a really smart guy. I don't think he was a GM back when Belichick was there. But with that being the case, your head coach thinks they're the GM and they're the ones calling the shots for every single thing, when really your better teams separate it. So when you inherit a roster that's already inherently beat up and bad and doesn't have the pieces that you're really looking for, well, now you're basically doing a Steve Wilkes situation, and you're setting up a good head coach to fail.
Yeah. I mean, for your Raiders last year, all the talk of every player that was there, including Devontae Adams, was Antonio Pierce is our guy. And
Yep.
what happened in 1 year? Nothing. They didn't give him a shot at it.
No.
Speaking of, though, like, who do you think's out there that could maybe go in? Because, this is a perfect segue. Tom Brady and Richard Seymour, these legendary Patriots, have ownership in the Raiders. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, the one name. So I know Pete Carroll got interviewed. I do not want him as a head coach. The one name that is of the group of 4 that's getting interviewed, I know. I'm not sure if Ben Johnson's in this too. I would hope he would be. But the one name to me that really sticks out, and I would like it because he does have that Georgia connection. So he knows at least one massive Georgia player on our team, another one that didn't have that great of a season. But I really hope the Ravens win it all. Like, I would love to see Baltimore win this all because I think Todd Monken would be a really, really nice fit for head coaching our team. That's the one that I'm really hoping for, because seeing Todd Monken do what he did at Georgia, translate that to Baltimore, and now if he were be the one to be given the reins to a team that has a young, basically has a young kind of good quarterback, but then has a ton of money to spend on where they want to fill in those pieces and bring in someone, who knows, maybe bring in an Aaron Rodgers alongside a Devontae Adams. That's possible. There's money for that. And then draft whoever you want. Again, too, being an SEC guy, maybe we do make some kind of play and draft Jaden Milroe kind of thing to kind of get like a pseudo Lamar Jackson in the works happening. Stuff like that would be really interesting. So if I had to say anyone of a guy that's kind of up and coming, I'd go Todd Monken.
Ooh, okay. That's
yeah.
I wasn't putting that one on my card there. So fun story. I've seen a lot of names pop up in interviews for your team, most of which have entertained me.
Okay.
Excuse me. Your team literally went out and like requested interviews for all of the Lions coordinators, which was great.
Yep.
They went. Yeah, they went to the Chiefs. They said, "Hey, can we have Spagnuolo?" I'm okay with that.
Right.
Like you said, Todd Monken, one of the best offenses of the Ravens. Now this is where it gets wonky. And then I was like, "Oh, please, Raiders, don't Raider this up right now." Yes, I know. I used your team as a verb.
But we just did this past week, and we had no business firing these guys, to be honest.
Pete Carroll, I'm like,
yeah, that's the one I don't like.
Pete Carroll's like 90 years old. Maybe put him as an advisor, and I'm cool with that. Like
Bruce Arians in Tampa. I think that's a great role.
Robert Saleh? Really?
I
don't
want that.
No. And then you requested, now this is only, I've heard rumors that Tom Brady talked to Bill Belichick about coaching the Raiders. And I'm like, okay, maybe that'd be a cool like pop of noise, but like go get yourself a coach. Like don't play with all these old time guys that like won 10 years ago. Like let's reset.
If you are at that age, you got to show me that you are innovative. So I do want to see that in a guy like Todd Monken with doing what he's done with the Ravens. I think that's very innovative. But other than that, I want like a Ben Johnson. But I think Ben Johnson is going to make sure that whatever team he goes to, he has a franchise quarterback that's there, or he would be able to draft a franchise quarterback. I think that's it. So I think, and again too, like seeing what what's his name, the head coach of the Washington Commanders. Seeing what he did, leaving Dallas to go to Washington means you already have an inside scoop on how your division functions. I keep sticking to my gut. I really think Ben Johnson's going to Chicago. I think that's the one that makes the most sense. You get Caleb Williams. You have more money to spend. I think Chicago makes the most sense with Ben Johnson.
Yeah, Ben Johnson's he's the hot name right now, which
he's number one in my
opinion. That's awesome.
That's the coach you have to get. But I also like though the offensive coordinator for Chicago. Seeing what he did this season with Caleb Williams, seeing that growth, I think is pretty strong. And I believe that offensive coordinator should be scooped up by one of these teams that could potentially lose their offensive coordinator. So maybe he flips from Chicago to Detroit, does well with Jared Goff again for the next few season or two. And then that guy 100% would deserve a head coaching job after moves like those.
Right. I mean, the Bears have been, and I give the Bears some credit. I can't believe I'm saying this. They have been busy. I mean, I'm just looking at some of the list of guys that they've interviewed. Anthony Weaver, the coordinator from Miami, Drew Petzing, coordinator from the Cardinals, Mike Vrabel got interviewed, Kafka from the Giants, Pete Carroll, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, like holy cow. And then they've got set up Brian Flores, Arthur Smith, David Shaw, who is the head coach at Stanford, Todd Monken, Joe Brady, Cliff Kingsbury, Ron Rivera. I didn't even know they dusted him off or something.
Yeah,
but,
I know. I like Ron. He's a good guy, but not a head coach.
They have literally been busy. Oh, and my absolute favorite. And this, I was like, oh yes, this is why these two teams are dysfunctional. The Bears asked to interview Mike McCarthy, who doesn't have a contract after I think Tuesday, I think is the deadline or something like that.
Yeah, it's going to come up this week. Yeah.
The Cowboys say no. And then everyone in TV land is like, well, if he doesn't have a contract in a couple of days, he can just go interview. Exactly. Just why would you say no? It just made no, unless they have some sort of plan, but clearly they don't, because when's the last time? Right. When's the last time an actual team had a head coach's contract just go away?
Yeah.
Expired.
It's like the employment just expires. It's like an internship, essentially.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the first time we're seeing that happen as far as I can remember. I'll be honest, I really think too, it doesn't feel like there's too many coaching spots out there. The one to me that I'm kind of shocked is still out there. And I do wonder if something does happen in the next week or so, I could see Cincinnati letting go Zach Taylor.
Oh,
I think that's the really interesting one, and we'll see kind of how this plays out. But to me, I think there's a lot of really interesting head coaches out there. I think both coordinators for Detroit are going to get jobs. Flores is going to get a job. And then after that, that's almost half of the spots that are still available because New England is gone. So now there's basically only 5 or 6 spots left. So it gets a little weird after that. I know the Buccaneers coordinator is one that people are looking at as well, who's been working with Matt Stafford 2 years ago, and now this year with Baker Mayfield. So I know his name is in the mix. I know it kind of simmered down because the season didn't go so well, but I know the offensive coordinator for the Texans is one that people are looking at as well. It may not be this season, but definitely come next season should CJ Stroud have a bounce back year. And I think that's pretty likely. I think that's another guy who people are going to look at and say, hey, if I need a new, young, innovative offensive mind, go with that kind of guy. So there's some real interesting candidates out there. But now with there being only maybe 4 or 5 jobs left, and 2 of them are going to get sucked up by Detroit coordinators, there's not too many spots left. So it's starting to get interesting. And guys like Cliff Kingsbury, you pretty much only have leverage with Caleb Williams. Other than that, I don't think Kingsbury has much leverage with anyone else.
No. And I mean, one of the openings doesn't seem like much of an opening, but the Jets, it was just
Oh
funny
man,
that
that's a disaster.
they brought in Rex Ryan, their former coach. Well, then why'd you fire him? They brought in their former general manager, Mike Tannenbaum, who also works for ESPN.
He's
Well, then why'd
not
you
good.
fire him? Like,
Yeah.
But it just was hilarious to me that they brought both of those guys in, and it's like, well, why'd you fire him in the first place? I don't.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. Like seeing stuff like that kind of tells you that you have a bad owner. And I'm one to say too, now seeing what I've seen with Mark Davis over the years, Mark is not his father. His father was an excellent owner. Mark is not that. Mark is a guy who's susceptible to emotion, and he's driven by what other people think. So I really hate seeing this turnstile going around with GMs and coaches basically every 2 years, essentially, is what's going on. And you see that with the Jets. You see that with the Jets. You see that with the Raiders. You typically get that with Cleveland as well. So it's really bizarre seeing these teams do it. And it's like, dude, like you got some good guys in place. There's no rush. The only rush that these guys put on themselves is their old age. That's the reason why they're pulling the trigger on so many guys so quickly. So it sucks.
Yeah. I'm with you. Any other fun things you got?
I don't know. I mean, like kind of looking at the games for especially the wild card round. I mean, thinking that I was trying to make some kind of parlay out of this, I ended up not going to the casino. Just kind of ran out of time and had other things going on outside of football life. But I don't know. Like I would have gotten one of these games wrong from yesterday. I would have definitely gotten the Ravens game correct. But again, I was all in pretty much thinking that the Chargers were going to take care of business in the Texans and go on this magical run through the AFC playoffs, and I'm completely wrong on that.
Hey, it happens. Trust me.
But these, I'll tell you what though, these slate of games for today, I'm just like, to me, all three of them are just bananas. I'm almost more excited for all three of these than I am for the game tomorrow.
Yeah. I was going to say, what game is tomorrow? And I had to
it's Vikings against the Rams in Arizona.
Yeah. Which, hey, to be honest, it's a good field. They could be slinging the ball all over the yard. I mean, that could be kind of fun. Or you could see Sam Darnold do what he did again.
And look at Ghosts. He loves Ghosts.
Right. That's true.
Ghost Adventures.
And Stafford.
That's kind of a good show.
That's true. Stafford could look old. I don't really know what to expect from that game. Both of those teams were not expected to be here.
That's true. I mean, when it came to the West and our predictions going into the season, I was projecting both Seattle and Arizona to make it out of the NFC West, and neither did. And that's a real shocker. I know it came down to the last week between the Rams and the Seahawks, but man, I just did not see LA going on this magical run. But man, if their offense is out there kicking with Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Kyron Williams, Matt Stafford, the defensive players that they drafted to replace Aaron Donald worked. They hit on both their players they drafted from Florida State. So that looks really solid for the LA Rams. I think that team is really geared up, and I think they're going to be more serious about this week than the other LA team that did not do so hot.
Yeah, I mean, if we're making a pick, I'm definitely on Rams. I don't know what the spread is. Well. It could be 5. Doesn't matter. I'm pretty sure
spread is actually favored for the Vikings.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Vikings are probably favored, but either way, I don't care.
Yeah, just money line straight up Rams is the way I would go in this game. So that's what we got there on Monday night. We'll just work this backwards, but we'll leave your game the best for last.
Wait, quick pause.
Sure.
I actually want to know your opinion on this. They are talking about changing the seeding process again for the NFL playoffs. I like it that if you win your division, no matter what your record is, because it rarely ever happens. Like we've never had a 15-win team in the wild card before. It's just bananas. But I feel like this is that season, and I saw that they were talking about it, that they want to switch. Like if the Vikings were playing, they would technically be at the Rams. So they want to. Oh, Vikings only won 14 games. My bad. But
the Rams would be at the Vikings.
Yeah, they want to play them at Minnesota. I'm like, I don't really think that's fair because, like, to me, divisions mean something. If you do this overall record thing, then you might as well just get rid of divisions and just say play whoever you want and let's figure it out.
So my reasoning behind this is, and this comes to what we did in fantasy this season, is how we actually played our division 3 times to make it matter. And again, we have divisions of 4, just like the NFL. So that is mano a mano in terms of the division mattering. But the NFL, you only play your division twice, which I've never understood, for playing as many games and then saying that the division means something when really the division does not mean anything when you play that few games. I think they need to play the division at least 3 times to make it matter. With that being the case, I would justify having a divisional winner have a home game. But the way this whole formula for scheduling is made, I agree with that. I like divisional winners getting in automatically, but I do not like having divisional winners having an outright home game for winning a division, which only constitutes 25% of all the games they play. To me, that doesn't make sense. I believe they should get in, but I want to see it all mathematically reslated for the higher up teams get the benefit of playing games at home. I just don't think there's enough divisional games at the moment to justify that yet.
Solid. Well, yeah.
Oh, hold up. Tinfoil hat conspiracy theory for the future. Let's get our tinfoil hat conspiracy theories. So again, we know the NFL is going to be going to 36 teams at some point. Does the NFL go to what we had back in the day growing up? Are we going to get 6 divisions of 6, or are we going to get 12 divisions of 3?
Ooh.
Yeah.
I think it could be 6 and 6.
6 and 6. So my belief of maybe it goes 12 and 3 is would 3 of those 4 expansion teams be international? And then you definitely play 6 divisional games, but you would be playing your division 3 times, maybe even 4 times. I don't know, but something to that extent. I would think you probably would play your division 3 times, but personally, just from a fandom of growing up from back in the day, I liked how the divisions had 5 teams, and the divisions back then meant way more than they do now since they reshuffled the teams at 32. I have never quite liked this current setup for divisions. I just think it's a sham of saying that divisions matter, because I want to see it back in the day. Like when the NFC North or Central back had Tampa Bay back in it, like it was a real wild card, and it was a real monkey wrench for Brett Favre and the crew. Back when all of a sudden like Warren Sapp would like show up and you're like, oh, we don't want to deal with this at the end of the season and go play a game in Tampa and have this weird game like actually mattering for who wins the division. I think back then divisions were so much harder to win than they are now, and they meant something going into the postseason.
Interesting. Yeah. I always remember Tampa being really bad until like early 2000s.
I know. But I like your idea of 6 and 6. Maybe you would have to put 3 international teams as half of that division of 6 and make it work somehow, some way.
Yeah, or whichever. Let's say you put a team in like Toronto, put them in the north,
Yep.
or you
Yep.
have a team like I don't know, Mexico, put them in the west, and wherever they're closest to.
Exactly. I think too, like if there was a way too, they can figure out how to get more teams in a way out west. I think that would actually benefit the league in general. Because to me, I think those Western teams travel way more frequently, and it's much harder on a weekly schedule for the teams out west compared to the teams out east that have virtually no travel. Like, what was it? The Ravens and the Lions had like 0 travel this year.
Yeah, I wonder why. Anywho,
hey, that's debate for another day. Ooh,
that's tinfoil hat.
I love tinfoil hat. Yes.
So you said you wanted to go backwards. So do we go to the Commanders at the Buccaneers?
We do. We go Commanders at the Buccaneers. I kind of want to pick the Buccaneers to win this, but man, I just love seeing this run that the Commanders are on. I'm just picking the Commanders outright. I would just go money line. Their spread is 3 points. You get 3 points if you play with Washington.
Ooh. So that means it's a pick 'em since Tampa's only getting 3 and they give you 3 for being at home. So my big thing about this game is there's one guy that nobody talks about, and I am still unsure why it happens. But I talked about it earlier. The 40 touchdown club is like exclusive company.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield's one.
He's in there.
He is.
We talked about how there was only like 15 quarterbacks ever. But we put up the second most yards in the league and the third most yards, second most touchdowns. And no one's talked about him as a MVP candidate at all.
Yep. Yeah, I think, and that's the thing too. They win this game today. That OC gets a job. They get their way to the Super Bowl. That OC gets a great job. He's going to be up there with Ben Johnson then.
Right, and like it's another one of those deals where I'm like, did anyone notice that Tampa Bay played football this year? Because when their backs were up against the wall and they needed to, start winning, because they started off pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie. They did. The middle of their season, they lost 4 in a row to like Atlanta, and
nobody loses to Atlanta twice.
Right. So then all of a sudden, the end of the season, they went 5 of the last 6, and they're a playoff team. Yeah, they lost to the Cowboys some weird way, but like they did what they were supposed to do. They blew out the bad teams. They hung in there with some of the good teams. They beat the Lions. They beat the Commanders by 17 this season. Just saying. They beat the Eagles. Like those are playoff teams. The Lions and Eagles are the upper echelon of the NFC or of the NFC playoffs.
Yes,
they beat both of them.
Yeah, they did. They did beat both of them, which is pretty impressive. And again, too, I think this basically identification that you've set up of who are those playoff teams and who are those teams that are clearly not playoff teams, it does regress to the mean, and it does show up, which clearly happened yesterday with both the Texans and the Ravens winning. I think you could be onto something again that essentially with that theory, the Buccaneers should flat out win this game.
I think so.
Yeah, they should.
As long as they're healthy.
Yes. Yeah, and I think they are pretty much healthy. I think Bucky Irving's solid going into this. I think Mike Evans is good. They got their guys. I know they were a little banged up with Cade Otton. I think that was the one that I was a little unsure about, but I think you're kind of onto something, that this team knows how to play well against really tough teams. And they got good management, good coaching. I think Tampa Bay is definitely the right play on this, actually.
Guess what? That Chargers team, they played them 4 weeks ago and beat them by 23.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I think Tampa Bay is totally the right play in here. I like it.
And now I know I'm on the Justin Herbert hate train and all that. He had what, 3 interceptions the whole season? Well, he threw one against Tampa Bay. Just saying.
Yeah. That's no debate.
Boom. All right.
Here we go.
Are we going Bills Broncos next?
Yeah, we are. We're going Bills Broncos. We're going Broncos halfway across the country to Bills Mafia. Broncos are given 7.5 on the spread, and I love it.
Yeah, we do. We are Bo Nix guys over here.
Yeah, we are. I can't say no to even money on 7.5 points. Like, it's basically what I saw last week with Bears Packers at 10. I'm like, are you kidding? I have to take it. That spread is just bananas against a good football team.
Right. Now the only thing that scares me about the Broncos is they lost to the Chargers twice. But you could argue that they're a different team. I don't know. I don't. The Broncos are weird to me. They
are.
They haven't beaten, I don't think, any playoff team. Nope. They beat the Buccaneers pretty handily at the beginning of the season. But like, they played the Bengals, who were on the cusp. The Bengals beat them. Then we started thinking Joe Burrow was getting in the playoffs. They lost to the Chargers twice. They lost to the Chiefs. They got ran out of the building by Baltimore. Like, I'm a little scared, but like, I don't know.
If I get 7.5 points, I don't have to win.
Well, that's true. That is also true. I'm just thinking of straight up, like, who's going to the next round? Like,
yeah.
But I've also seen Buffalo lose to the Texans. So, like,
yeah, exactly. So, like, I'm going into this game, like, if the Bills win, cool. But, man, I am totally rooting for the Broncos.
That's no debate. That's exactly how we're gonna say it.
Yeah.
The Bills win, cool, but we're rooting for the Broncos.
Yeah, you get 7.5 points. I mean, if you get a touchdown, you're up more than 2 touchdowns to start the game. That's insane.
I do have a little beef. So, you know how the Packers had the only blowout on the season with, keeping a team to 0. I was a little mad that Carson Wentz didn't score a touchdown.
Yeah, that is kind of weird. I don't know how they completely fell so flat with backups. But to me, this kind of tells me that there might be more things going on in Kansas City than we're led on to believe.
Maybe. But Bo Nix was 26 of 29 with 4 touchdowns. I was like,
you ain't being that.
Oh, it's like 20-something to 0 at halftime. Like, this is insane. That's my pick. I don't care who wins, but give me some Bo Nix.
Also, I'm rooting for the fact that I don't want to see either the Steelers or the Texans meet up in the first game against the Chiefs. And if the Broncos win, that is completely avoided. So the Broncos would go to Kansas City. They know that team. They've played them tough twice. Granted, it's backups. I get it. But the first time, they should have won that game. I really like Denver matching up against Kansas City, or honestly, the LA Chargers, who went down. I would have liked to seen either of those teams match up against Kansas City. But if Buffalo wins, they're going to be at home against the Texans, and I'm a little concerned about that. I think that's not a good matchup for the Texans. That is definitely not going to go well.
If Buffalo wins, they play the Ravens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's a war. Yeah. That's the AFC Championship, essentially, in the semifinals round.
Is it?
Bills Ravens? Oh yeah. That's a flat out war. I would take both those teams against Kansas City.
Ravens beat them 35-10.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that, but I mean,
no. That happened. That happened this season. It happened. They smashed them. It was 21-3 at halftime.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry had a $199.
Yeah. I mean, again, I am rooting for the Ravens to just crash their way through this AFC playoffs to the Super Bowl. I think they are just the disaster team that no one can really figure out. They basically have a virtually perfect fantasy football offense in real life.
Yeah.
I mean, they're running, again, I love 12 personnel. They're running 12 personnel. They have Derrick Henry. They have Lamar Jackson. That's a fantasy football team right there. And then they have Rashad Bateman, who's a solid number 2 wide receiver. If he's healthy, they have Zay Flowers, who is a bona fide number 1 weapon on top of being a great slot receiver. They're swapping out Flowers for Aguilar since his knee got banged up last week. But even then, that wide receiving core is still legit and solid. I love seeing what they're doing there. And plus, when they get to like X and 1, they can do the brotherly shove like the Eagles, but they do it the right way. They don't do it like these other teams. They don't use their running back. They don't use their quarterback. So you save both those guys and the wear and tear on them. And you go with Mark Andrews, who's a tight end, who his job is to block and find the gaps. If you want to do this right, you should be using tight ends instead of quarterbacks and running backs. Baltimore is doing all of this right.
Yeah. I kind of just, all right, not going to lie, I want to see Baltimore play the Bills now, just so we could go, this is your MVP.
Oh, exactly. Yes. I mean, that is definitely something that I want to see as well. I would like to see that that matchup ensue, and you will absolutely see. Even with that game being in Buffalo, I don't think they're going to have any qualms about playing that. They play in a hostile stadium, even though it's their own. They got no problem going to another hostile stadium, even though it's not on their side.
Right. I
mean, the Ravens can totally do it.
It's down the road too, so I mean,
yeah,
they could just show up.
Exactly. All these teams out east, they got no problems just bouncing from stadium to stadium.
Could you imagine trying to tackle Derrick Henry at like 30 degrees outside?
Yeah, and even with it being at Buffalo, that's not going to be an advantage for the Bills at all. Like, that's going to hurt regardless who's doing it.
That's gonna, like, you could be blocking for him and he'd run into you and it'd be like someone threw it. You know, like when you used to play like snowball fights as kids and by accident one kid picked up the ice and clocked someone. That's Derrick Henry. But it's coming. It's not accidental.
I know. And like I saw last night, he basically makes one cut and he's 7 yards upfield. It's insane. He doesn't look like Derrick Henry now. He looks, I don't know. He looks like friggin' like Jahmyr Gibbs, except he's twice as big as Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah. 250 pounds is that's no debate.
That's no debate. There is a sneaky player that we'll talk about as we lead into next season that exists in the NFL, an incredibly young player. But he has sort of a build of Derrick Henry, and I think he can give the running back ahead of him a run for the money. But he is the only other like prototypical height and build and speed of Derrick Henry. So there is a second Derrick Henry out there if you want to find him.
Ooh, nice.
Ooh, there is. So yeah, we're both rooting for the Broncos in this game.
I'm all for it.
Yep.
So I'll let you go first. I'll let you go first.
All right. So last week, I completely disagree with Matt LaFleur's mentality and what I've heard of a lot of local Wisconsin sports media say that Green Bay needed to play that game, win that game, and hope that Washington takes care of business. We saw how that played out. It was a disaster. However, what I know is that Matt LaFleur is, to me, absolutely a top 10 head coach. And he is a guy who can be humbled by his mistakes. He learns from his mistakes and he gets better very quickly. I think he's going to learn from last week. He's going to go into this game fresh. The defensive coordinator they hired from Boston College is really, really sharp. I've liked him from watching a few of their games last season and also seeing their box scores. Boston College, a lot of really tight games that are low scoring. And this year for the Green Bay Packers, Green Bay is one of the best teams in the NFL against the run. And this is how you have to stop Philadelphia. If you stop Saquon Barkley, I'm pretty sure you're going to win those games. And you can do that, and you'll have to attack that secondary. It's going to be very tough to run on Philadelphia. But if they can get into a rhythm where they can kind of get that offense rolling, get ahead, then use Josh Jacobs and stop Saquon Barkley, those elements together absolutely equals to a W. So for those reasons, that's why I see this game being an upset.
You are with me. So Jalen Hurts is coming back from injury. I hate seeing players injured or banged up, but he's had quite some time. They say he's back. He's ready to go. Well, the Eagles were actually 28th in the league in passing offense. Now, mind you, Packers were kind of in the middle of the, top 10-ish in rushing and passing and total yardage and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now, what you just said, the Packers are actually number 7 in stopping the run. Now, that's where the Eagles, they do their dirty work, stopping the run.
Yeah.
But guess who's a little lower on that list? The Philadelphia Eagles. The Packers are one of the top running offenses in the league, as well as the Eagles, but the Packers stop the run better. And the bugaboo for the Packers this year has been kind of stopping the pass of all things. It's kind of weird. They're like a middle of the pack team in stopping the pass. The Eagles are number 1 in stopping the pass, which completely understandable. If the Packers lean on Josh Jacobs, which is exactly why they brought him in a cold weather situation to go bang some heads, the Packers could win this game. Remember, the first time these teams played, it was pretty close, and no one had a clue what the Packers were up to. I mean, as Packer fans, we're all like, who's this new defensive coordinator? Well, they're in Brazil. People are falling all over the place. Guys are getting injured.
It's a slip and slide.
Jordan Love looks like he forgot how to play quarterback. And they still only lost by 5.
Yeah.
His QBR was like 20 or something ridiculous. I think Malik Willis actually got snaps in that game. But the one big thing was Josh Jacobs was running all over the building. So was Saquon. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
But the Packers' rush defense has gotten a lot better since then.
It has.
I think the Packers, they should win this game.
Yeah, and this is a field that is going to be a better playing surface than Brazil. And again, too, like my tinfoil hat. Well, no, this isn't a tinfoil hat. This is more of like a soft plush, kind of almost like leather kind of like wizard hat. I've been feeling that the seasons are going to end badly for Philadelphia and Detroit. I think this is the perfect game for it to end badly for Philadelphia. It's like all this good momentum. Everything's going good. Everyone's healthy. You're resting guys into the playoffs. And then you lay an egg against Green Bay. I think that's highly likely. And plus, I think, too, for this game, I think Jair Alexander comes back, correct?
I don't think so. I thought he – oh, man. I thought he had some sort of situation where, like, they're not really letting on what's happening with Jair. But I'm not sure if he'll be with the Packers much longer.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, okay. It's been a little weird.
Kind of Romeo Dobbs-ish.
The Romeo Dobbs one, he at least apologized for it.
Yeah.
The Jair Alexander thing is, I'm kind of confused on what's going on.
So it's closer to like Cam Akers than it is Romeo Dobbs. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then he tore something, and I don't know what to believe anymore, because there was a point where he literally came back and he went to play, and then he played like 8 snaps, 10 snaps, and it was like, oh wait, Jair's not in there. Okay.
Yeah. And Green Bay has a solid secondary without him. Just being legit, they can do it without him.
Yeah. But from what I'm seeing, Matt LaFleur confirmed that on Wednesday, Jair's not going to be there.
Weird.
But even without that, I think they're pretty solid. The fun part about this spread, and this is kind of why I'm leaning Packers, they have the lowest total for the entire weekend.
Oh, that's
45.
massive. Now I'm seeing 46.5. But if
Even
that's a
46, still the
yeah,
lowest.
yeah, so that is a major, major concern for bettors, or sorry, not bettors, books. And I've always thought that this is the one game to me that feels the weirdest of all the games in the week. And this to me is the game that feels kind of weird. I think that Bills Broncos game kind of feels kind of odd, but to me, like definitely this is the game that I think could be a real surprise factor for basically the majority of media and people that follow football.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be honest, it sucks for the Eagles. Like, yeah, the Packers are my team. Yes, that's all dandy, but like the Eagles haven't really been tested in a while.
No,
Um,
the
like
division's terrible.
I'll run through just the wins that they've had, but like so after the Browns loss or the Buccaneers loss by double digits, it
Yep.
was Browns, Giants, Bengals, Jaguars, Cowboys, Commanders, Rams. Then they beat the Ravens. I'll give them that. Carolina, Steelers, lost to the Commanders, Cowboys, Giants.
So they play in the same division as the Houston Texans, right?
Did they play the Houston Texans division? Oh, I got you. Now I see what you did.
That's debate. That's
Yep,
debate. Yep,
total
yep.
debate.
That's a little
And so,
debate.
like, to me, the Packers have been playing like a pretty rough and tumble schedule at the end,
Yeah.
especially like, I mean, they played the Vikings, they played Seattle, who was fighting for a playoff spot at the time.
Yeah, that's middle of the
They
road.
they went they went down to the wire with the Lions for 3 in Detroit. The Dolphins were fighting for a playoff spot at the time. They smashed them. The 49ers people thought they got Brock Purdy and this and that. They smashed them. And it was just like they kept just ticking away. They beat the Texans. They beat the Jaguars. Like they were beating solid teams on the way to where they are. Yeah, the teams that they lost to were all in their division, but like and they're all
Oh,
playoff teams. But
okay.
yeah,
So it's what five losses against the NFC North, correct?
yeah.
That's not too shabby, man. Like
No.
the division is pretty tough, and I think too when we were talking going into the season, I was thinking Green Bay was going to go about 3-3 against the NFC North.
Yeah.
The division is much tougher. I thought Chicago would split against Green Bay. They would. I thought Green Bay would split against Minnesota and Detroit. But Minnesota and Detroit were even better than what we thought. So
Yeah.
just is what it is.
I mean, a 6-loss season, and 3 of them are against the top 3 teams in the NFC.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Now it's an even playing field. We see what the matchup looks like, and
Yep.
I don't think Philly wanted to play a Green Bay in the first round.
No, and here's the other thing too that is kind of cool with if we look at like the way I would want to reseed teams, which is what you brought up earlier in the show. If that were the case, Green Bay would be a 4 seed, and Green Bay would have a home game, which to me they absolutely deserve. They deserve to be at home. Philadelphia deserves to be at home. Minnesota deserves to be at home, and Detroit is at home. That I can totally justify those 4 being the 4 best teams in the NFC.
I'm just down for football. I'm excited.
Yeah. These games, all 3 of them. I mean, maybe not all 3 of them are close, but man, this is like on a Sunday where I see any of these 3 games, I'm like, man, I'm geeked up for like all 3 of these games being my favorite game of the weekend. I think they made a dynamite lineup for Sunday.
Hey, and good job with the NFL. One's on Peacock, one's on CBS, or NBC, sorry. NBC, yeah. CBS, Fox. Like, and then the Monday Night Football game is probably on ESPN. Like, exactly. Good job. Good job for them.
Yeah, and then the one game yesterday on the Amazon, which is pseudo for Fox. Totally legit. Totally legit. Yeah, good.
I'm actually okay with that. Like everybody, it's playoff time. Everybody gets to eat.
Yes. Yeah, I like that. I think that's healthy. It looks good. I like that more than seeing like on a Saturday you get like 2 weird games on NFL, which is obviously pseudonym for one of the other broadcast networks having to carry a game, or putting both games on ESPN is kind of weird.
Yeah.
Getting a mix of one each, to me, is the way it should be.
And it's all broadcast television, because I know the
It
ESPN
is.
game, I think, is going to be on ABC. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
It
I
is.
think you are
Yep.
correct about that. ABC, ESPN, they might do like the was it the Peyton Cast thing, or what?
Oh, the Manning cast. Yeah.
Yeah, the Manning Cast thing. So that's pretty cool.
I,
I like the mix for sure.
I just want a playoff game on Nickelodeon. Then I'm in.
I think that was yesterday. I think that was
It was?
Yeah, it was. You missed it, bud. It was Chargers
Oh.
Texans. Because I saw at the end of the game, I saw Joe Mixon just hanging out on the sideline wearing slime on his head.
Oh, man. No, I
Yeah,
didn't
I'm
see
sorry,
that.
bud. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sad.
Yeah, next team.
Heartbroken.
That's debate. That's debate. Yeah. So hey, I think we got it, man. I think we got a good show today. I love our time slot. I love working this 10 a.m. on a Sunday. Yeah, I think we got this, and same time next week, bud.
So much for going short, right?
Yeah, so much. Yeah, hour 15. We're like, bam, that feels short to us, man. That's
Right.
no debate. Exactly.
Only 4 games. What were we doing?
I know we were just chatting it up because we loved all these games. So
Yeah.
that's how you do it, man. So hey,
Boom.
that's how you do it. Boom. I'm Steve Metrics. That's your boy.
DJ Triggs.
And that's no debate.